Hi, friends, and welcome to another episode of your Bish Therapist podcast. I am your host, Melissa Reich, your Bish therapist, a real-life therapist turned pop culture aficionado, serving clinical interpretations and hot takes on all things pop culture. And today's episode is going to be another solo episode for a couple of reasons. Number one, I have a lot to talk to you all about today, like a real lot. Number two, I realized that in the beginning of the season, I was doing a lot of guests primarily. And recently I've done a couple of solo episodes and you all like those too. Sometimes people prefer the guest episodes. Sometimes people prefer the solo episodes. You know, my whole thing right now is trying to achieve some balance, which sometimes feels like a tightrope walk, but nevertheless, here we are. So I hope that you have been enjoying the episodes, whether they are solo episodes or guest episodes. And while today will be a solo episode, I'm very excited to report that our dear friend Mandy Slutzker will be back for M&M Hour at the end of the month. Her dad's surgery went well, the family's doing well, and she's ready to come back. And I missed my buddy. So I'm very excited to report that we'll be doing another M&M Hour at the end of the month. And then my birthday is April 4th. I'm going to be 45, which, holy Moses, I cannot believe I'm going to be 45. I didn't even think I'd live to see 40. I know it's not funny. By the way, I have to tell you all, so today's going to be a little bit of like a rambly episode, but that I just have so many things to tell you. But when I was in therapy a couple weeks ago, my therapist and I were talking about my dark humor and my laughter and all of that. And she's like, you know, Melissa, at the end of every session, like for therapist notes, you have to check someone's affect. So someone's affect is essentially, how do they present? Do their outsides match their insides? So essentially, if someone is depressed, do they seem depressed? In other words, does someone appear kind of catatonic or having like a quiet voice, you know, looking depressed and seeming depressed and all these other things? I'm not explaining it super well, but the point is that sometimes my therapist shares things with me because, you know, as a fellow therapist, I appreciate it. And she's like, at the end of all of your sessions, I check that you have inappropriate affect, which is so funny. It's so hilarious because so inappropriate affect is when your outsides don't match your insides. So for example, for a lot of folks who have depression, anxiety, PTSD, and people who have a lot of trauma, we learn to do something called masking. Growing up, if you've had trauma and you didn't have people to listen to you or hear you or things like that, you learned really quickly to just hide what's going on behind the surface. And so I mask probably better than, I don't know. I don't know that I've seen anyone else do it better, which is not good. That's not good for me. Like, that's not healthy. But I do still mask. So for example, like there are times where I'm doing this podcast where I'm wildly depressed or very anxious or having a really bad day, but I can sound just fine. And so when my therapist shared with me that I always have inappropriate affect, we just laughed and laughed and laughed. And I was like, that is so rude because of the absolute accuracy and honesty of that statement. Just that sometimes therapists have to say some real honest stuff sometimes that does throw you for a loop. And, you know, for people who are like, oh, I relate to this. Oh, I mask too. For me, I've been doing it so long and it's so hardwired into my brain that my therapist said it may not change. This just may be who I am. Or if I'm like, get bad news or, you know, find out something bad, I'm just like, hee. It's wild. And that's the other thing about therapy, which I love is that, you know, I'm very insightful and I have a ton of awareness, but like I'm a human that I can't see my own blind spots. And I need someone to reflect them for me. And so, you know, when my therapist does that, we have a really good giggle about it, of course, because I love to have an inappropriate giggle. So anyway, the long rambling point of this all is that my birthday is coming up. You know, the fact that I am going to be 45, I legitimately never thought that I would live to see that. You know, and for people who listen to this that somehow, you know, don't know about my medical stuff. There's plenty of episodes. You can go back and listen to it. But, because I'm kind of taking a break on just like talking about my health stuff. I was so exhausted about it. And I feel like it was exhausting other people too and making people worry. And I just needed to give it a break. But so for my 45th birthday, I'm going to be doing an episode with Lindsay and Brady from Recap Rodeo, because last year we did the same thing and it was just by accident. But I was getting ready to schedule with them again. And I was like, oh, it's going to be my birthday. And they're like, I think we did that last year. So I think that a Recap Rodeo birthday episode is just going to have to be like the yearly ritual at this point. So I'm very excited, to have my friends back. I really miss Mandy, and I'm grateful that she and her family are doing well. As much as I love doing solo episodes, it's also so important for me and fun to engage with people and not just talk to myself and hear other people's thoughts and feelings. And I'm also working on getting some new people on the show and just branching out a little bit as well. All that being said, I have some seriously insane stuff to tell you guys. And I can't be super specific about it all, but here we go. So the first thing is I got an email from Access Hollywood about they wanted me to be on a panel, and they asked me if I was in LA. And I was like, no, I'm not in LA. I actually live on the East Coast, and they're certainly not going to pay for me to come out there. I'm not going to go out there because my body just cannot do that. And, so that was wild. But then, of course, like, I think yesterday news broke that Access Hollywood was canceled, and I was like, oh. Well, their last gasp of air was asking your Vish therapist to be on a panel, so I'm not sure how I feel about that, but here we are. And then the second wild thing, which I'm not going to give a ton of details about this, but I was asked by production if I gave permission for one of my posts to be used at the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills reunion. Oh my God. I know I can't even get words out. For people who are just listening to this, my faces are just like, oh, I can't believe it. So the reunion already taped, and they either used me or they didn't, which, by the way, like, talk about anxiety provoking, because if I'm just like a regular person, a one-man band. When I got this email, I can't even, this is what this email's done to me. I'm just like, bah. And at first I was like, is it real? And then I realized it was real. And then, of course, so yes, I gave permission for my post to be used. However, there is a possibility that they may not use it. There are creative directions that they go in for these reunions, and there is a possibility that the creative direction changed and that my post may not be featured at all. However, I don't know. So if it is used, Andy will be reading my handle, my Instagram handle, and my post. And if it's not used, then it will be a great disappointment, right? So it's like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I just kind of wanted to share it with everybody because it's a lot. It's a lot to just be like a person sitting here. And by the way, it's like, I'm just a gal with an anxiety disorder, like a very serious anxiety disorder. And every night I'm just like looking for clues. I'm like, did they talk about me? Did they not talk about me? Like, what's going on? It's terrifying because if they do use my post, like, my life is going to change. And if they don't use my post, then nothing will change and it will stay exactly the same, which is what I'm super used to. So and again, there's sudden appropriate laughter. But just to be asked is such an honor. And honestly, I'm going to find out when you all find out. When we watch the reunion, and then I'm like with a magnifying glass, I'm just like listening so hard. I'm like, are they going to mention me? TBD. So TBD. I shared it on social media and then I deleted it because I didn't want anyone to see a post and then think I was like being messy or something. So I deleted that. And I just feel like this is my podcast and I could talk about what I want. And I'm not divulging any secrets. I'm just saying this is what's happening to me. And so I was busting. I just could not wait to share with you all. So TBD. I don't know when the reunion's airing. I don't know if they're using one of my posts. I don't know if my life is going to change or if it's going to stay exactly the same. I have no idea. But I can tell you for sure that my anxiety has been 100 out of 10, and I have not been able to sleep. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing without two people. One of them, as you always hear me talk about, is Miss Amy Phillips, who she literally took a chance on me. She gave me everything that I have in the podcast world just because she liked me and she thought I was talented and she thought I was good at this, literally. She is one of the most amazing, selfless people that I have ever met. And in this industry, that's super rare because usually people are pretty, it's very disenchanting seeing how people actually are in this industry. And so that's why Amy's a real one. She's just like legitimately a wonderful, giving, beautiful human being. So number one, wouldn't have any of this without her. But number two, without my therapist, because I don't know if I've ever shared this with you, and forgive me if I have, because I'm going to be honest, I've been spending a lot of time with my grandfather who has dementia. And I swear to you, for people who are caretakers of people who have dementia and you spend a lot of time with them, it can scramble my brains, like kind of get so lost in his world and figuring out how to help him and interpret things and his memories and understand what he's saying. And then with my own chronic illness and my brain fog and my fatigue, I'm just like, oh gosh, this is a wild melange of things. But sometimes I'm like, am I spending too much time with him that I'm just like telling old stories over and over? So I apologize if I'm telling stories over and over, but my therapist, when I started this about 3 years ago, I'm losing track now. But when Amy gave me the opportunity, I talked to my therapist about it, and I was so taken aback. I haven't had like a ton of great stuff happen to me in my life. And so sometimes, quite frankly, I don't know what to do with that. And this was one of those things. I was like, well, I don't know what to do with this. So I think I just want to say no. And my therapist was like, Melissa, you have to do this. You have to try it. She's like, I mean, there was a lot to it and I'm not going to go into all of it, but we really had an entire session about like, trying to change the factory default settings of my brain, my neurology, my wiring. It just needs to be undone. And to undo neurology and wiring and all of that, you have to act opposite over and over and over again. And you have to deal with the discomfort, and you just have to do that over and over again. And so my therapist was really the only other person who was like, yes, you have to do this. And let me be clear, my therapist is not like a directive person. She literally never tells me what I need to do, what I don't need to do. I have insight and awareness, and she reflects things to me, and then I kind of understand what I need to do with that. That's the dynamic for us. But for this, she was like, you have to do it. And so when I told her about the potential opportunity about having a post read at the reunion, I mean, she literally, like the joy that was on her face, I don't know, it was just really sweet to watch. And I'm just really grateful. I guess that's what I want to say. I'm really grateful for the fact that like, not only am I going to be 45, which like I never thought I would live to be 45, that I somehow fell ass backwards into becoming a middle-aged podcaster and like influencer on social media, which barf, I hate that statement, but like technically I guess I am. And I don't know how it happened. I don't know how it happened. But the reason that it happened is because I stopped letting my fear lead me and I acted opposite in ways that are continually extremely uncomfortable for me. And so the long rambling point of all of this is that when I got the email about, do you want to give permission for this post to potentially be used at the reunion? Again, they could go in a different creative direction. I'm very aware of that. My initial reaction was, no, I don't want that. I don't want that because the more eyes that are on me is the more judgment and, all of these other things. And then I quickly realized, this is my my factory default setting response, and I need to act opposite. I mean, I asked people, I got feedback from folks, and it was a resounding yes. And when I told my therapist the story, she's like, please tell me you said yes. And I was like, of course. So, would it be ironic if I acted opposite and I had all this anxiety and I was like, gave my permission and then they didn't use it? Well, sure. But it's, for me, the real learning lesson in all of this is that I can accept that good things can happen to me. And that whether it does or it doesn't, just to be asked is an honor. And I have to continue to try to put myself out there as much as it scares me or it makes me uncomfortable. Because quite frankly, I don't care about the people who are angry or trolls or whatever. That's just part of the deal. But I do care about the people who I get messages, thank you for helping me understand this, or, you've helped me so much manage my own trauma. That is the reason why I really feel passionate and good about doing this. I'm not here to sell anything like Amanda Francis. I'm not here to, coach or, sell a program or sell this or sell that. And in fact, here's the thing. I've had a lot of opportunities for like paid collaborations. And if it doesn't align, I'm just like not interested in that. And so I just have to keep my eye on the prize of like connecting with you all, sharing my experience, strength, and hope, validating yours, hearing your stories, and talking some Bravo in the process. That's really what I love to do. Today, I'm going to be talking about Real Housewives of Beverly Hills because I have some serious stuff to say about that. I'm going to be talking about Southern Charm, and I'm going to be talking about Summer House. First, I guess we'll start with Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, the show that may or may not change my entire life, where Amanda, we have to talk about Amanda. The thing that bothers me about Amanda, well, everything, number one. But number two is that on this episode, Amanda brought up Dorit talking badly about PK on camera. And she's like doubled, triple, quadrupled down and just thrown excuse after excuse after excuse out there. The first excuse was, well, this was Kyle's opinion. And then the second excuse was, well, not the excuse, but like she didn't talk about it because she was like grieving the loss of her son. And then it was Kyle did it. And then, there were like a couple of other excuses in there. And here's the thing, like, it might be a bad idea for Dorit to be talking about PK on camera. It probably is. But at some point, let it go. It's Dorit's decision. We can't prevent people from being the architects of their own demise or their own success. It's up to Dorit what she wants to do. So Kyle and Sutton and Amanda continuing this nonsense, it's just like, you're just trying to create, I don't know, some sort of narrative. And what bothered me is Amanda said that she believes she knows what she's talking about because she has a quote unquote informed opinion because of her master's degree in counseling. Ugh, woof. Okay, so here's what I want to say about this. Amanda trying to say that she knows what's better for Dorit than Dorit because she has a master's degree in counseling is manipulative, egotistical bullshit. Amanda and I technically have similar credentials. I have a master's degree in clinical psychology, and I have a license in the state where I live. And Amanda had the master's degree, and she was in a PhD program, and then she quit that program. And by the way, for those of you who do follow me on social media, I actually posted. So Amanda Francis has a post. It's still live on YouTube unless she saw what I posted and decided to take it down. But she posted in 2014 this vlog, this video post on YouTube about why she quit her PhD program, which like sometimes PhDs are not for everybody. And I'm going to be honest, a PhD wasn't for me. And the reason for that is a PhD is like to get a master's and a PhD in psychology, it's extremely expensive. And what you're going to make after you do your schooling is not enough. Like someone who has a doctorate degree in psychology is not going to make like what a real doctor makes, which is again, like the healthcare system is crumbling because there's not enough helpers. There's not enough practitioners. There's certainly not enough good ones. And a lot of the reason for that is we get paid not super well, believe it or not. There are ways to make good money, but it requires a lot of strategy. And it usually involves like owning your own practice, which is also not for everybody. So for me, the checks and balances didn't even out. Like I was like, well, if I get a doctorate, I'm just going to have all this debt. And then it's going to take a long time to like get myself out of that hole. And it just didn't make a lot of sense. So it's not quitting the program that was the problem. But if you follow me on Instagram, and I posted clips from her YouTube video because they're so insane. She just like went on this like word salad about how like we have to follow our bliss, and if it doesn't make us happy, and we have to like, if we have gifts, we need to use those, and blah, blah, blah. So you can check that out on my Instagram at RHOBH Therapist. And you could just like Google Amanda Frances quits PhD program, and you'll find the whole video there. It's Amanda looks completely different. She sounds completely different. But the most important thing is her language is really wild. The thing about people like in cults, there's a lot of like woo-woo language, but it's ill-defined and it's used as manipulative tactics. So it's less about like the helping or spirituality or whatever, and it's more about getting people to buy your product, which is you. So that's the thing with cults, is that the cult leader, and I'm not saying Amanda Frances is a cult leader, like she was in a cult and she kind of talked about that experience a little bit. But what I'm saying is some of her behaviors give me red flags, because what I think Amanda is selling is herself. And that's a very cult-like sort of approach. So for example, Amanda Frances, she does her coaching. Amanda Frances literally went from doing her master's program to she went into her PhD program, and then she quit that. And while she was doing all this, she was also doing her coaching. So let me be clear that when Amanda talks about like her clients, she may have had internships, but she basically was not really in the field. She was doing her quote unquote coaching, which again, to be spending money and going to do a program that has rules and regulations and regulating bodies, and then to just decide that you're going to do the polar opposite of that. To me, there's some concern there. There's this manipulative piece of like, okay, so I know enough psychology to be a little bit dangerous. I know what to say and I know how to do this, but I want to make more money and I want to capitalize. So I'm going to just like do this vagary that doesn't require rules and regulations. It feels very icky to me. And it feels like what I finally am realizing is that Amanda Frances selling her coaching stuff is just like, here's how I was successful. And she's her own product. She has nothing new to sell. Like her manifesting, that's not her idea and that's not new. She didn't create that. She's just someone who's capitalizing on other people's ideas or things that already existed and then making her business out of it, which is very Mel Robbins of her. So who, by the way, Mel Robbins is, I'm going to be honest, she's another grifter, the let them. She stole that from somebody else. And she also left out the other most important point of that theory is like, let me. And so she just took a very important theory, chopped it into bits that would go viral on social media, and then just like rode the wave to becoming like another grifter who has actually no idea what she's talking about. So, that's a whole other thing. And I'm sorry for people who like Mel Robbins, but in the therapy and psychology community, people know exactly who she is and call her out all of the time. Anyway. So Amanda is essentially selling herself as the product. Like, if you just have a video call with me and I tell you all this gobbledygook of following your bliss and thinking about how much money you want to have or manifesting it, like there could be no boundaries in the world, what would, blah, blah, blah. And so I think that is really wild, is that Amanda just, I don't know, in my opinion, she just learned how to take advantage of other people and ride it to the top. And so for people who feel like there are red flags abounding, I think that's very intuitive. But the second thing about Real Housewives of Beverly Hills that really annoyed me is that, so Rachel Zoe last week, she did this scene with her sons where she was like talking to them about the divorce and like about Roger's girlfriend, but like what she was doing, it was a scene that was like very polarizing. And I love those scenes because to me, it's like the polarizing nature of it. It's completely dependent on our own lens and our own perspective. And there are so many people in this world who just don't understand that sometimes, children are human and they need to be in on things and they need to have things discussed with them, but in developmentally and age appropriate ways. And when Rachel did the scene, I was like, oh, I think this was amazing. I think it was very vulnerable. But there were people like Bethany Frankel who watched it and raised questions after basically slamming Rachel over this divorce scene. And it really made me mad, and I'm going to tell you why. Rachel Zoe has one of the highest levels of EQ that I've ever seen. And EQ stands for like emotional quotient, which is kind of like IQ, but for emotions. So I have a lot of EQ, very high awareness of emotions of myself, emotions of other people, emotions of like things around me, people who are very tuned into that. Rachel is tuned into her own emotions and the emotions of her children, number one. Number two, Rachel Zoe is a beautiful parent who literally would die for her children. And I trust that Rachel knows what's best for those kids more than Bethany Frankel or anyone else. Rachel would not put her children in a harmful situation or take advantage of them because that's not who she is. Rachel is one of the greatest things to happen to Bravo in a long time. And by the way, I watched the Rachel Zoe project. I loved her from day one. But having her on this franchise has elevated it in a way that fans have noticed. And I think that, number one, mom shaming is wild. Like, I'm not even a mom, but I'm like, Bethany, you're a woman who went through a very contentious divorce with a child who was exposed to a ton of different things. And you're going to shame Rachel for talking to her kids about it on camera? Excuse me? Like, that's just so ridiculous and rude, number one. Number two, there is just too much shaming. Like, we don't know these people. Bethany doesn't know Rachel. I don't know Rachel. So we have to trust that Rachel is doing what's best for her family, number one. And number two, that Rachel knows what's best for her and her kids more than any of us watching, including Bethany Frankel. So Bethany needs to have several seats and mind her own damn business. And everyone who thinks it was inappropriate, I'm sorry, you have no leg to stand on. We have to trust that Rachel, we see like at the end of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills episode, her children, like she wants her children to understand that they have agency, that they can consent, and if they don't consent to things, then that's a problem. And she needs to be aware of that. She's basically letting her children know their basic human rights as children. And I think that is dope as shit. I think she is attending to them in ways that are beautiful. She is helping them understand that even though Roger wants to talk to you about his girlfriend, you don't have to do that, which is why at the end of the episode, she was so upset because she missed this text due to the time change from her son. And because Roger doesn't care about what the kids want. Roger's your typical, whatever, person who leaves this long relationship, is in some sort of midlife crisis, and his girlfriend is the most important thing to him because it probably defines him as a person, because he clearly has had some issues, allegedly. And I think to plow through your children's consent in terms of what they want, because what you want is to talk about your girlfriend, I think that's really gross and shitty. So, but the point is, when we see Rachel freaking out, I mean, literally, I could tell she was in a full anxiety spiral about, I couldn't talk to my son about this then, and now it's too early for me to talk to him about it now. And I know he's upset. And she's like, I just want to leave. Here's my long rambling point. This is a person who, her feelings of her children come before anything. They come before the cameras. They come before Bravo. They come before Roger. They come before her. They come before all of it. So we have to trust and believe that Rachel is doing the best thing for her kids. And I think she is literally the best thing to happen to Bravo in a long time. She's an amazing mother. She's an amazing friend. Her EQ is off the charts. Her vulnerability has changed Beverly Hills. I could go on and on. I also think that what I will say is Bethany, because she grew up with very unstable parents who were very inappropriate with her, who parentified, I think that she, in her defense, is projecting that stuff onto Rachel, because Bethany, she's had some therapy, but she's still, you can tell that a lot of times some of her posts are very led by trauma, and which, fair enough. I'm not, that's not a knock, but I'm just saying, I think that what Bethany needs to understand from the whole Jill Zarin stuff is that not all thoughts are outside thoughts, which is something that I say to my niece and nephew. My Well, my nephew is 10 and my niece is 8, and my niece is like a feral cat. And anything that comes into her brain comes out of her mouth. And so sometimes people, children and adults, need to learn that not all thoughts are outside thoughts. Some thoughts are inside thoughts. And I think that Bethany needs to be aware enough to put the phone down and realize that just because she has an opinion on something, it doesn't make it newsworthy, noteworthy, and it doesn't make her right. We can all have opinions, doesn't make us right. So that's my thought on that. Okay, so now let me move on to Babadu, Southern Charm, because much like my irritation for Bethany, I also have a lot of irritation with Craig. So what was interesting is that this episode started out really nicely and then it kind of devolved really quickly. And it started with like at dinner, Craig didn't offer Sally an apology. He basically was like, oh, I had a blast yesterday. And it's like, oh, you had a blast getting blackout drunk and verbally abusing a cast member who's supposedly your friend. That was you having a blast. I mean, that was wacky. That's a red flag. So the entire table looked stunned, but Rodrigo was like the only one with the courage to be like, so what happened? And so Craig claims he was triggered by Sally. Holy Moses. Oh God. He was triggered by Sally being in his business. And then he claimed, sometimes I can't process. Okay. Here's a few critical points here. First of all, being blackout drunk literally means that our brains literally are unable to process information, which leads to lapses in memory, hence the blackout. So his inability to process was completely self-induced. Boom. Number 2, Craig was upset. He was not triggered. Let me be clear. People use the word triggered to validate, like it's one of the ways that people weaponize therapy terms to validate their pain, but they're not using the word correctly, and that's what's weaponizing it. So let me be clear. In psychology, being triggered refers to an intense, involuntary, and often sudden emotional or psychological response caused by a stimulus. So sight, sound, smell, feeling in the body, that acts as a reminder of a past trauma or deep emotional wounds. While popularly used to describe feeling offended, annoyed, or uncomfortable, a true psychological trigger is far more intense and disrupts a person's sense of safety. So what is my point? Being upset is not being triggered, number 1. Number 2, being triggered also is not an excuse to treat people like crap or to be abusive, period. No matter how upset we are, it does not give us the right to violate other people's sense of safety. And that's what Craig is essentially saying. He's like, she's in my business, so that triggers me so I can verbally accost her because I don't feel safe. And it's like, sir, you can't remove somebody else's sense of safety because you're blackout drunk, number 1, and number 2, you're just like upset. So using the term triggered, he's weaponizing it to try to make what he's doing seem valid, which is also why all of the Craig stans on the internet are making me crazy. But I kind of figured out what is happening here. I will say, as someone who I have PTSD and I do get triggered to the point where if there is a smell or a sound, I'm not going to be specific because it's very personal, but there are a couple of things that will physiologically trigger me to have a panic attack and to completely melt down, just like physiologically. And I've learned how to manage it. And maybe I can do another episode on that. But like that is being triggered. Being triggered is not me being upset about something or someone saying something that I don't like. That's just something that bothers me. Like if a troll comes to my page and it's like, you know, Craig is amazing, you suck and you should lose your license. That is just me being annoyed. That's not me being triggered. So let me be really clear that Craig has no idea what he's talking about. But then what happened next is Sally told Craig that he should have apologized. She literally looked at him with this puppy dog face and she's like, I was sad. That hurt my feelings. You called me a loser. And Craig, what he did next, I was like, oh, this is how he does it. He literally smirked. He turned to her, he smirked. He had this like very interesting smirk. And he said that he was sorry and that he would take it back if he could. And then somehow that goes into like Craig being like, you know, I think we just need to spend more time together. And if you look at that moment, literally, for people listening to this right now, go back and look at that. That is the look of a manipulative person who knows exactly what they're doing. exactly what they're doing. And how do I know it's manipulation? Because he technically apologized to Sally, but then he continued to blame his behavior on her for the rest of the episode. You're not sorry. If you're continuing to do the same thing, you are not sorry. And it's actually irritating me that people cannot see this. Like, I am literally giving away Craig's playbook, and people are like, nah, he's not doing that. But so let me get to why I think that is. His manipulation worked. Sally folded shockingly quickly, which Charlie was also like, what the hell, dude? And then they all just got in the van with him after being like, I swear we'll never get in the van with Craig again. Later in the episode at Patricia's Carolina Day party, Charlie was not being honest with Craig about how she feels because Charlie has trouble being honest about, I don't know, I think everything. But Craig like knows something is off. And again, of course, he's not blaming himself because God forbid Craig ever look inward. But so Charlie avoids him. And then finally, Craig and Charlie talk. And Craig is like, what's going on? And Charlie's like, oh, well, what I witnessed in Mexico, she said my switch flipped and now I only see us as friends. What did Craig do? He, first of all, deflected saying everyone has bad nights and Sally got into my head. Again, that's how you know he's not sorry. His apology to Sally was just to manipulate her and everybody else, which worked. And then Craig did the same thing he did with Sally, turned on the charm, turned to Charlie, smirked. He said, we can never just be friends, which is like his own manipulative way of being like, no, I don't accept what you're saying. And then he claims that he would have picked Charlie over Paige. Boy, bye. Boy, bye. Also, number one, that doesn't even make sense. Paige broke up with you and she's not interested in getting back together. Number two, it was a clearly manipulative statement. And guess what? It worked because Charlie was flattered, which I was like, girl, come on. This is the thing. Like, we need some like emotionally intelligent people here to see through Craig's nonsense and to just like call it out, which by the way, Austin did at the end of the episode. But Charlie was flattered and it disarmed her. Fortunately, she stuck to her boundary. But like, again, those two things help me completely understand what's happening here. Craig's charm. He is so charming, and which again, I don't think he is because I can see through it. And people also think he's very handsome. And again, I don't think he is because to me, behavior is a part of being attracted to somebody. And if someone has shitty behavior, they're not attractive to me, but I digress. So Craig's charm extends into his parasocial relationships with women on the internet. That is what I came to realize. And I know for a fact that that is true and that is accurate. Now, it may not be the reason for everyone, but because all the only people who were coming into my comments to be like Team Craig or Craig is amazing, all women, all of them. And I think that because of Craig's, the way that he looks and his ability to manipulate, I really do think that it bleeds into his parasocial relationships. And these women will do his bidding and they don't even know him. So think about this. If Craig's charm is his superficial charm, by the way, is so intoxicating to his castmates, it's going to be intoxicating to people watching it as well. So I've solved that mystery. I feel really good. I understand how it happens. And I'm just really grateful I'm one of those people who can see through it. And if you are too, congratulations. Well, that's an amazing thing. But so at the end of the episode, Austin literally just lost it on Craig. And to be honest, I don't think that Austin should have like yelled as he was walking away and like, doing that whole thing. I don't think he needed to do that. But everything when he and Craig were sitting there, I think was super valid. Essentially what triggered Austin, Craig was telling Austin that he's bummed that Charlie ended their like situationship. And he continued to lament again about how Sally made it difficult for us and it's Sally's fault. And keep in mind, he just told Sally, I'm sorry. And we should be friends and hang out more. Okay. And Austin just had no patience for his denial. And he said, you say mean and nasty things, shit that you cannot take back. Then Craig said, do I get angry? Yes. And then Craig claimed that he works on himself every day. And I would ask how. Like, I would have wanted Austin to stop and to say, tell me, what do you do to work on yourself? Because Craig is doing nothing to work on himself. He's just using his same old shtick of manipulation and superficial charm and gaslighting and deflection and all of that. I mean, I don't see Craig working on himself, but hey, that's me. So Craig said, do I get angry? Yes. And I work on that. I hate being reactive, but it's in response to people doing fucked up shit to me. So you're not working on yourself because, like, listen, if I'm like, oh, people on the internet are mean to me, so I can just like act however I want to act. And it's like, no, I'm an adult who's still responsible for my behaviors. That's literally all we have is can control our thoughts and our feelings and then what we do with that and how we act that out in our behaviors. So Austin points out that Craig takes zero accountability and plays the victim. Austin asked, how many people will you scream at before you think about changing your behaviors? And I thought, snaps, bro. Great question. So Austin, like Craig is claiming that he's like doing the work. Austin's like staying on message, saying you have a serious anger problem. Do you accept that or not? And then Craig's inability to own anything just like sent Austin spinning. And Austin said, you'll never see another person's point of view. It's cyclical because you don't take accountability. And Austin is exactly correct. He's exactly right. I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. Authentic relational repair cannot occur without ownership and acknowledging our mistakes, owning our role, and then commitment to changing our behaviors going forward. So I'm telling you, in terms of relational repair, the reason Craig cannot do that is he's incapable of owning and being accountable for his own stuff without blaming other people. And so you cannot have a relationship with someone like that. It isn't possible. Unless you're going to be an echo chamber for them, unless you don't care that they reciprocate, unless you don't care about having like a real authentic connection, but then that's not a real relationship as well. But here's the thing that I really realized to kind of wrap up the Southern Charm stuff is that on Watch What Happens Live, Andy asked Craig about his reaction to seeing the van footage. And initially, Craig tried to say he was well aware I freaked out and it shouldn't have happened. But Craig revealed that he does not watch the show. Not only does he not watch the show, he makes his assistant watch the show for him and give him basically the Reader's Digest version. And this is why Craig does not learn from his behavior, because he set up a gatekeeper to prevent him from feeling his own discomfort. I feel so relieved to have like answered those questions of like, why isn't Craig learning? Or like, why do these people stan Craig? And now I feel like I have answered both those questions, and I hope that you have all found that interesting too. Now, before I wrap up here, I definitely need to get into Summer House because there were a couple of things that happened, one of them being Ben and Baily. And what I always find super interesting is when scenes like this happen and then you watch how the internet reacts, and it is all based on our own lens, our own experiences, our own perspectives, our own trauma, all this other stuff. Basically, Baily made a bad joke about, Ben being in love with Amanda at Amanda's birthday dinner. And so Baily, it seems like she kind of has this odd flirting style. And I think that she's very into Ben, but Ben doesn't know that she's into him because she, again, has this kind of odd flirting style. And she also was in an abusive relationship. And so I think a lot of this compounded to create the situation that we're seeing. So what was interesting to me is how everyone viewed what the Ben and Baily conversation different. And so I'm going to give my thoughts. Levi, Sierra, and Amanda all agreed that they think Baily is in love with Ben and that maybe there's like a little bit of resentment or frustration of Ben seems to be giving Amanda all this attention in ways that her own husband isn't. He's getting her towels, he's getting her coffee. Ben is trying to like give context to his anger in a confessional, saying he suddenly felt paranoid about like, oh wait, am I doing something that's being misread? Am I doing something wrong? Do I need to reassess my relationship with Amanda? And so then like he confronts Baily, but so the way he does it is he comes in her room, he does step on all of her stuff. She has some clothes and shoes and stuff on the floor. He just comes in, he kind of steps all over it. He sits on her bed and he was angry. As someone who grew up with a lot of anger, there was something for me that I did notice about Ben where it seemed like under the surface, there was this simmering anger. He wasn't yelling, but he was clearly really upset. And he was being hurt. He was being abrupt. He was being a bit harsh. So he didn't yell per se, but the behaviors around what he was doing were definitely put Baily, put her guard up. So Ben confronts her. And then I think also what upset Ben is that Baily was like, oh, well, you and Amanda, I was just taking the lead about you guys joking about, hooking up or having this relationship. And Ben was like, we haven't done that. And again, this is a situation of like, our perspective is our reality. Ben's perspective is different than Baily's. And everyone watching this, their perspective is different. And so Baily, she keeps pushing back, which seemed to really escalate Ben, because I think he felt like a little bit gaslit by Baily, but then he became more defensive. Ben asked Baily if there are underlying issues, which she denied. But here's the thing. I think that Baily, this is a situation where I think Baily was number one, like truly triggered, like in every real sense of the word. And I think that she's unaware of the subconscious processes driving her behavior. So in fairness, I think that Baily really doesn't know what she's doing. And I think Ben misread her defensiveness. So Baily talked about in a confessional being in an abusive relationship. And when you're in an abusive relationship, you tend to really look into to keep yourself safe, every facial expression, every move the person makes. Like you almost become like a mind reader based on what you're seeing in front of you to like calculate and try to figure out like, do I need to get out of this situation right now? Is this person about to explode? Like people in those situations, they often become hypervigilant and they look at every single little thing that a person's doing to try to keep themselves safe. I truly think this is a case of two things can be true. Her feelings are valid because Ben was kind of very abrupt and harsh about it. And again, coming in, stomping all over her things, it just didn't feel respectful, because you can be upset and you can be mad. But I think that there were some things about the way that Ben did it that was inappropriate. But Baily, I think, her feelings are valid, but also I think she's applying old feelings to new situations. So I think this is a case of those two things can be true. And then it's a case of two things can be true for Ben, where it's like, I understand maybe why he was upset, but I think the way he went about it was really interesting. And he kind of then just stormed out when they weren't getting anywhere. And here's how I know Baily was triggered, by the way. Because if she was just upset, she would have like gotten ready and went out with everybody else. But she was triggered, which means I'm shut down. I can't do this anymore. I need to be in bed. I need to cry. I need to she was kind of perseverating on it, like thinking about it over and over and over. That is being triggered. That is not just being upset, just to be clear. Hopefully Craig gets the notes on that, but he doesn't watch anything or listen to anything that challenges him. So he's not going to get those notes. But, and I think the other thing that I didn't love that Ben did was that he knew that she was upset and he said to the guys like, oh, I should probably talk to her. And then he just didn't. That I didn't love, because if you know someone's upset and that you contributed to that in some way, shape, or form, I think what you do with that information says something. And I think the fact that Ben just went out and drank and had a good time and didn't follow up with her or check in with her, that kind of bothers me. And I think Levi is a real friend to stay in with her. But I think the fact that not a lot of other people checked in with her, I didn't love that either. The ladies checked in with her and then everyone kind of left to go out, which fine, fair enough. But I wonder what would have happened if Carl was there. If Carl was there and if Lindsay was there, I really wonder what would have happened. I think the situation might have been different. I think for different reasons. I think Lindsay would have, I don't know, confronted Ben a little bit or kind of, taken up for Baily. But Carl, I think, would have come with some empathy, understanding, and I think he could have really diffused or dissolved the situation, and holding Ben accountable and kind of talking with Baily. So that was kind of a bummer that those two people being out of the dynamic really changed it. But the other thing I want to talk about is that at the beginning of the episode, we kind of see Sierra finishing schooling Jesse about boundaries and self-restraint. And in a confessional, Jesse admitted he's attracted to Sierra, but he knows that she wants and deserves more than a casual surface relationship. And so he admitted to being upset and disappointed in himself. And so I wanted to take the opportunity to talk about healthy shame versus toxic shame. Because to be honest, I think this response with Jesse is an example of healthy shame. So toxic shame means holding on to mistakes and self-punishing leading to more acting out. It's kind of cyclical where it's like, okay, I made a mistake. So I'm going to beat myself up. I'm going to overfocus on it. I'm going to feel really badly about it. It's going to lead to cyclical acting out. But healthy shame includes using that emotional distress to spark introspection, resulting in behavior change or making amends or whatever it is. And so I think that sometimes we need to feel healthy shame to check our own behaviors or to adjust our own behaviors. And so I think Jesse's response is totally healthy, totally appropriate. I appreciate it. He wasn't trying to give excuses. He wasn't trying to blame other people. He was like, I screwed up here and I feel bad about it and I don't love that. But hopefully this healthy shame will lead Jesse to treat Sierra with the respect that she deserves and is asking for. Because all Sierra's doing is trying to ask these men to respect her and be intentional with her. And everyone keeps treating her like a toy. And I don't like it. It's just ridiculous. But the last thing that I want to say about Kyle and Amanda is that this episode, we see Amanda's birthday dinner and Kyle gave her a Cartier watch because he said it was mission critical to get her a good gift. But later at the vineyard, Amanda joked that Kyle's gift was more about getting claps from the group and less about meeting her own needs. And then she joked, again, this group with jokes, and then she joked, now I can leave him. And so I think that was all very telling because I think Amanda knows Kyle better than anyone. And I think she's exactly right? When Summer House isn't filming, what does he do? He goes and he DJs. He's not home. He's not with Amanda. He's not helping her depression. He's not helping her clean the apartment. He's just blaming her for these things and he's off and he's DJing. But all of a sudden, when cameras are on, he's giving her this very expensive gift that she's looking for. And I do think there is a piece to this where it's performative. And Kyle, I'm going to be honest, Kyle and Craig are cut from the same cloth. They are people who want to blame everyone else for their stuff, who don't understand how they get in their own way, and they don't understand the ways that they're showing up is actually inauthentic. So all Amanda wants from Kyle is to stay home and stop drinking or drink less. I don't know. And he's like, well, I can't do that. So let me give you this Cartier watch in front of the group and on TV because this makes me look like a good guy. So I think that Amanda had every right to kind of like make those quote unquote jokes. And I think this whole house needs a lesson about how jokes can be used as armor. As someone who tends to use inappropriate humor too, I think inappropriate humor or jokes are fine. But you got to get to the meat and potatoes of really what's going on. Otherwise, relationships aren't going to be authentic. They're not going to be the healthiest that they can be. So that is going to be it for me today. My goodness, have I talked too much? So much talking. But thank you all for your constant support. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for being here. I will respectfully ask everyone to do a couple of things for me. To number one, if you could please give the podcast a 5-star rating if you are enjoying it. And not just rating it, but also giving a comment really helps. It balances the scales a little bit from the people who just get mad that I block them on Instagram or, whatever. And then they just like take the little shrapnel of control that they have and they apply it to me in rating the podcast. So if you're genuinely enjoying the podcast, if you haven't rated it yet, please go do so. A 5-star rating and a comment would be super helpful. The second thing I'll say is that for those who love my Instagram, Patreon I have 3 tiers that are paid, but I also have a free tier. And the free tier is where you can use like the group chat, you can private message me. I am starting a book club, which I've been dragging my feet on because I've had a million things going on, but that is going to be starting and free members are eligible to do that. And free members also will get access to like a once yearly Zoom, which I do with the other paid tiers probably about once a month. So there are benefits from joining my Patreon. And if I'm being honest, there might be some changes coming. Instagram is, I don't know. There's things that happen on Instagram that I don't love. And so for me, Patreon is always where I will post my authentic, unfiltered thoughts, feelings. I talk more specifically about things because it's just like a group of people that I trust. So I would love for anyone listening who hasn't checked out the Patreon, please do that. www.patreon.com/yourbishtherapist, YOURBISH therapist. So thank you all so much. Sending love to you and yours. Ta-ta for now. Disclaimer. Posts are not intended to diagnose, treat, or provide medical advice. Your Bish Therapist is for entertainment and informational purposes only. The podcast, my opinions, and posts are my own and not associated with past or present employers, any organizations, Bravo TV, Greyheart Productions, or any other television network. The information in YBT podcast and on its social media is provided for general informational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose or treat. Please do not act or refrain from acting based on anything you read, see, or hear on YBT podcast or associated social media. Communicating with YBT via email and or social media does not form a therapeutic alliance. Melissa, operator of YBT, is unable to provide any therapeutic advice, treatment, or feedback.